The obvious question, which is a lot of these mobile learning-based systems are put together around SMS. SMS has 160 characters.
Yeah.
How can anybody learn anything in such a limited number of characters?
Yeah. You know, I think that, again, we need to look at a repertoire of educational approaches and also tools that we could use. SMS does some things particularly well. It does other things very poorly. So you would not want to replace a textbook with a string of SMSs, right? And so I don't think that, you know, you could rely solely on SMS for your educational experience. But in terms of delivering a small bit of information at the right time, in a cost-effective and immediate manner, it does that brilliantly. And so we need to think about, you know, how does it complement books or PC-based networks or the classroom experience, and really think about mobile learning as not as a replacing kind of paradigm, but as a complementary one, and just extending existing
supports.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what I don't understand is that in television and radio as media, you've had educational use for entertainment, so you've had what become known as edutainment.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be much of that in mobile learning. Many of the mobile learning programs seem to be quite conventional in their approach, and, to focus on some of the hard skills without any of the narrative which would make it attractive for self-learners. Why is that?
You're quite right. I don't really know what the answer is. I think perhaps because, you know, mobile learning, one of the key strengths of mobile learning is that it can play to the interactivity and the interactive features of mobile phones or mobile devices. And so if you pose multiple choice questions, that's a really easy way to get that interactivity. And
but the reality is that a lot of the interactivity in mobile learning is sort of, yes, I'm here. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I think that the education kind of world needs to move that way. It needs to consider edutainment and needs to consider learning that talks very much to the lifestyle and the learning and the life situations of learners, and make that educational experience that's delivered on a mobile device that you're carrying with you to your home, to the mall, to the playground, to the fields. Tie into that experience more. It can then be much more effective. It can really drill down into situated learning, but also from an entertainment perspective. You know, we know that one of the most popular uses of mobiles in Africa is Facebook Mobile. So that's social interaction. You know, people they're reading, they're writing, they're actually doing learning activities.
And you yourself were involved in a project called Yoza.
Exactly.
And describe that, because that gives some sense of
Sure.
the kind of process that allows kind of both pleasure and learning all at the same time.
So essentially in South Africa, which is where the project started, we have a situation where there are very few books. Only 7% of schools have functioning libraries. But most young people, especially in cities, have access to feature phones that can access the internet. And so we publish short stories on a Mobi site, yoza.mobi, for young people to read. Pretty short, short pieces, but to read and to interact with. So they could vote on things happening in the story and mostly leave comments. And there, our first primary goal was to make great, engaging content. But they were learning at the same time. You know, they're reading, they're comprehending, they're responding. But it's worked very well. In the first year and a half, we've had 47,000 comments, which is more than the length of War and Peace that people have written back. So there it worked well, and I think building on that kind of thinking.
And they're engaging.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not saying here is learning, and that happens at school, and here is your life, and that's fun, and it's totally, there's no education happening. Mobile devices can bridge those two worlds. And I think that the education world needs to kind of wake up to that and bring in this entertainment and this kind of
self-learning.
Exactly, yeah. And recognize the learning that happens there in those social interactions or in those comments or whatever it is.
And lastly, give me a comparison as to where mobile learning has got to in, say, Africa and Asia, just as two very different groupings of places.
So overall, look, Asia, of course, is a very it's a big area. If you had to look at Singapore and South Korea, for example, and Japan, mobile learning is fairly advanced, because that society has devices that are smart, that are kind of pervasive to that community.
They make those devices.
They make those devices.
Yeah.
The community is literate.
Yeah.
Those devices are very much a part of their life, and so mobile learning being integrated into those education systems has been far kind of more seamless. Although, having said that, there's still a lot more work to be done there, and I think that overall we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. But contrast that to other countries where more developing countries. In Africa, there are pockets of innovation and really amazing projects that should be scaled up, and that.
And what are those pockets? Give me one or two examples of those pockets of innovation.
Okay, so for example, in South Africa, there's a number of projects. So Yoza cell phone stories. I mean, there's an example of using mobile to meet a real world need that isn't being met by the traditional system. The MoMath project is a way to...
Based on Mixit.
It's available on Mixit.
Which is a social messaging service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a way to access maths curriculum and also to do maths exercises, most of which have been done in the research that's been done on that project has shown that most of it's being done outside of the school environment. So there it's using mobile to extend the learning experience and enriching it, the formal experience. There are projects in Niger where basic SMS is being used to deliver and to support adult education, especially amongst women. And results have shown that using mobile compared to not using mobile is more effective and more cost effective. So there are these pockets. Overall, though, governments have not adopted mobile learning as much as they should have. And there's a lot of work to be done to raise awareness around what mobile learning can do, what it can't do, and to raise awareness around, what you had mentioned earlier, around people's perceptions. There is a real perception across the board, from parents to teachers to ministers of government, that mobiles are distracting, they're disruptive, they have no role to play in education. And it's up to those in education to make the point that actually it does have a role to play. It does certain things very well, and it can complement existing educational efforts and extend them in ways not possible before. So there is, awareness raising around the educational benefits, and to kind of highlight, the projects that have been rolled out. Yeah.
Steve, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you.